I think you guys have probably figured out that I love the number 5. I do usually like to include it in my videos. 5 things reviews, 5 bold predictions, 5 everything else in between. And I'm going to go through at least 5 different rookies and how they have performed in the opening 5 rounds of the season. I'm going to do this for all the rookies, possibly as well for Liam Lawson as well. Whether he's a rookie or not is debatable, but for the 5 proper out-and-out undisputed rookies in Formula 1 this year, those being Andrea Kimi Antonelli, Oliver Bearman, Gabriel Bortoleto, Jack Doohan and Isack Hadjar as well. And I'm going to start with Kimi Antonelli because he has been absolutely incredible this season. He really honestly surprised me in a sense. I always thought he'd do well coming into F1, but he's really taken into it like a duck to water. So here are the 5 things that we have learned so far about Kimi Antonelli in Formula 1. So the first thing that we've learned is that he is ready for Formula 1. And that might sound obvious, you know, the fact that he has done this so well. He has been incredible since he's come into Formula 1. But there were a lot of doubts on him coming into this season. Of course, he is at the tender age of just 18, the youngest you can possibly be before becoming a Formula 1 driver these days. He's not even finished school yet. He is continuing his studies to complete his exams over in Italy, while also moonlighting in a sense as a Formula 1 driver. Is he moonlighting as a school student? I don't know. Answer on a postcard for that one. Of course, he famously crashed out in Monza last season as well when he competed in a free practice session for Mercedes, and people were saying, this guy's not got it, he's not ready for Formula 1 yet. But oh my days, did he prove us wrong. He's been absolutely brilliant, and I'll go into why exactly and some of his main highlights during this video as well. But yeah, he is ready for F1, absolutely deserves his place on the grid. He is not a token, he is not there too soon. He is fantastic, and it's great to see an Italian driver, a competitive Italian driver in Formula 1 for the first time in a very long time. I loved Antonio Giovinazzi, but come on, competitive, not really. He's the first in a very long time to come from Italy that has really got a chance of becoming a star in Formula 1. Number 2, though, he will make mistakes. He is human, he is very young, and we've seen some ups and downs from him so far in his career in Formula 1. A lot more ups than downs, but the only really down I'd say would be Bahrain, where he just missed out on points. But despite that, that is the first time when he's not finished inside the top 10 in his Formula 1 career so far, and he only just missed out then as well, being up in P11. Number 3, he's absolutely rapid in wet conditions. Of course, we had a wet Australian Grand Prix to start the season, and he didn't qualify particularly well. He was out in Q1, he started in 16th place, but despite that, he climbed 12 positions during the Grand Prix to finish in P4, just off of the podium and just behind his teammate George Russell, who is vastly more experienced in that car and also more experienced in Formula 1 in general. That was an incredible drive. We've not seen him finish quite as high up since then, but I really do think this kid is incredible in the wet. Anybody that saw his performance at Hungary in Formula 2 last season will be left in no doubt as to whether this guy is quick in the wet. So if we get a wet race coming up in Miami or Silverstone or Canada or anywhere like that where it's liable to be wet and tricky conditions, this kid is very much going to be a threat, especially if he qualifies up the grid too. Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, I do not rule out him challenging those guys at the front of the grid during a wet race when we get another one. He's already a record breaker as well, the 4th thing that we has learned during this. He broke 2 all-time Formula 1 records during the Japanese Grand Prix earlier this season. He completed a very long opening stint of the race to lead the race as well, about halfway or so, just over halfway or so through the Grand Prix, becoming the youngest ever driver to lead a Formula 1 Grand Prix. He also set the fastest lap of the race in Japan as well. That is an all-time record as well for the youngest to ever do that. He broke Max Verstappen's records on both of these occasions as well. And the last thing is that he's going to be absolutely crucial in Mercedes getting runner-up spot in the Constructors' Championship this year. Now, of course, we know how important George Russell is. His consistency has been fantastic. He is very much going to be the one who will get most points, I would say, this season so far, and that is, you know, that seems to be the case so far this season. You know, he's having a fantastic campaign, up in 4th overall in the standings. But I think actually Kimi Antonelli is going to be very crucial in that as well, as a sort of, I mean, saying he's a number 2 is a bit disrespectful, but the fact that he's a rookie, he is kind of a number 2 effectively, at least in this regard when it comes to points. If he overtakes George Russell eventually, he's not number 2 anymore, but you know what I mean when it comes to this. But he's going to be crucial when it comes to Mercedes potentially getting 2nd place overall in the championship. I think McLaren are going to take a lot of beating really in that. So I think that battle for P2 in the Constructors is absolutely wide open. Red Bull and Ferrari both going for that as well. And his performances really against the likes of Hamilton, Leclerc, and also Yuki Tsunoda as well in that second Red Bull seat. He will be very much expected to beat those guys on at least a semi-regular basis and drive home that advantage that George Russell is getting at the top as well. So yeah, those are the 5 things that we learned. I'm very excited to see Kimi Antonelli. If I had a gun to my head and I had to pick a standout rookie so far this season, Antonelli hands down wins it. He's been brilliant, despite Ollie Bearman doing really well, despite Isack Hadjar doing really well at times as well. Even Gabriel Bortoleto, you guys know how much I rate him. He's, they've all done good performances so far this season at times. So yeah, I think Antonelli really is head and shoulders above them right now. He is in the best car for sure out of those kids, because they are kids, like 18, 19 years old, a lot of them. But I think he really is showing his talent, and I'm really excited to see where he goes from here. And who knows, one day, it's a long way off probably, but one day he might become the first Italian driver to win the Formula 1 World Championship since Alberto Ascari in the early 1950s. It's been a long time since Italy's had a top Formula 1 driver. But yeah, your thoughts on Kimi Antonelli in the comments below. If you had to give him a rating out of 10, what would you give him? Personally, I'd give him a 9 out of 10. I think he's been brilliant considering his age and lack of experience really in Formula 1. To come in like this and do as well as he has, superb. Continuing on the theme of incredible rookies, let's talk about Ollie Bearman. Oliver Bearman has been an absolute sensation as well since coming into Formula 1 full-time in 2025. Of course, he did have those cameo appearances for Ferrari and Haas last year, making 3 different race starts, and very impressive on all of those with the exception of Brazil, where it was very tricky conditions. But let's talk about Ollie Bearman since he's joined Haas Formula 1 team in 2025. The 5 things that we've learned about him so far in his short career in Formula 1. Now, the first thing that we have learned is that he has absolutely searing race pace on occasion. Now, the season didn't start the best for him. We'll talk about that very shortly. But his performances at the Chinese and Bahrain Grand Prix were unbelievable. He was pretty average in qualifying, and again we'll touch on that in a bit more detail soon, but his actual race pace was absolutely unbelievable in both of those. In Bahrain, he qualified P20 and last. He finished 10th and got a point throughout that race. It was really emotional hearing his dad on the radio being like, "Oh, love you, son, done so well." And I think any parent could, relate to that kind of proudness. And, it's just a really wholesome moment. And China as well, I mean, he was helped by the disqualifications ahead of him, of course, but still very solid, ending up in a point position. I think he was in 10th in that one. And again, was way down during the race. I know he was P8, my apologies, but he was way down during the race at the start of his qualifying. But to get that was unbelievable in what is not the best car, let's be honest. Not a bad car, not the best car either is the Haas. Number 2, he's very resilient. Like I said, it was a really tough start to this season for him. I really felt for him. He had a crash in P1 in Australia, then he got another crash in FP3. He didn't compete in FP2 because of the crash in FP1, and in qualifying he was nowhere. The car looked absolutely terrible in that first round. We genuinely thought that, a lot of people were thinking Haas going to be the back markers here. They are really struggling, but he dusted himself off, as is the team as well. They are performing better on the whole. Esteban Ocon getting some good points too. Again, we'll speak about him very shortly, his teammate. But to actually get there and pick himself up from that when people with a weaker mentality might have really struggled, he really has performed well since then. So fair play to Ollie Bearman in that regard. If he is going to improve anywhere though, it's his qualifying. His qualifying hasn't been that great overall. He's only managed to get into Q3, the top 10 on one occasion. That was in Japan, and he did manage to convert that to P10 by the end of the race, because that was not the best race in general. No one could pass each other. I was going to swear there. No one could pass each other during that Grand Prix. So, still converting those points. They're 3-point scores in a row as well. China, Japan, and Bahrain as well. Seriously impressive. But if you're going to nitpick anything, it's probably his qualifying that needs to improve. But hey, that'll come with time. I think the race pace being so impressive, you'd rather have someone who qualifies badly and races well than someone who qualifies well and races badly. The points are paid out on Sunday, unless we're talking about a sprint race, but the points are usually paid out only on Sunday. So There we go. Number 4, he's going to be crucial in that fight in the Constructors as well. Haas really have catapulted themselves up to 6th place in the Constructors at the moment. Ocon doing most of the work there, 14 points to 6. Again, we'll talk about Ocon very shortly. But, they're just 5 points behind Williams in the Constructors battle. Realistically, the best they can do is 5th. Ferrari are absolutely miles clear despite the double DSQ in China. They're not going to catch them. So Haas are fighting for 5th overall in the Constructors. They are 5 points behind Williams. They are 10 points ahead of Aston Martin, who are in 7th. So it is going to be a really, really tight battle, and Bearman's consistency, Ocon's consistency is going to be crucial in getting that place. And the 6th for them is huge, but they're going to want 5th, and if they can do that, Haas, I think that'd be even more impressive than what they managed last season. And for me, they were one of the most improved teams last season compared to 23. To do that and go up from 7th to 5th, I think that'd be massive for them. But yeah, the final thing is that we're going to have a good battle between him and Ocon. And I was thinking, coming into this season, I did say that, all the rookies relative, I think they're going to struggle compared to their teammates. Even Kimi Antonelli compared to George Russell has not performed as well throughout the season. I am not saying that Antonelli's had a bad season by any means. Go look at my, my video about him that should be out before this one, I do believe. I gave him a 9 out of 10 for his performances so far this season. But I did say if any rookie is going to beat their teammate this season, Bearman is the most likely to do that, partly because I don't really rate Esteban Ocon that highly, and I think Bearman is a very incredible driver. And so far it's close. It's not a complete blowout. 14 points for Ocon, 6 for Bearman. That can turn around very quickly. But yeah, that teammate battle between them two is going to be really close, I think, through this season. They are, and the thing is as well, Bearman's going to get better as the season goes on. He's going to, Ocon will of course get more used to the car as well at Haas, but Bearman on top of that as well, his general experience in Formula 1, his learning curve is a lot sharper. His potential improvements is a lot sharper than what Ocon's is. So I absolutely think that Bearman can beat Ocon this season. I think he still have a chance for that, but I think it's going to be close. It's going to be closer than what I expected. But yeah, your impressions of Bearman so far in this season, guys. The Bearman himself is doing very, very well in Formula 1 at the moment, in my opinion. I would definitely give him... I'd probably give him at least an 8. He's got to get at least an 8 out of 10 for me for his performances so far, if I was to rank it. Gabriel Bortoleto, the first full-time Brazilian Formula 1 driver in 8 years. It's so great to have a Brazilian back on the Formula 1 grid in a full-time capacity. It's been far too long. The Brazilian people, I know I've got a lot of Brazilian subscribers as well, so bom dia to you guys, or bom dia, I think it's pronounced correctly. I did remember Gabriel Bortoleto when I was interviewing him, responding with that, and I'm like, oh, is that how it's pronounced? But let's talk about Gabby. Let's talk about how he's done so far in Formula 1, because it's been a trying time for him, to be honest with you. I think it's been challenging for him, but I think overall he's done all right. I've done all right. And that's kind of my first point about the 5 things that we learned about Gabriel Bortoleto. He's been solid overall, I'd say. Yes, no points, but he's also probably in the worst car on the grid as well. Aside from the opening round in Australia, that car has never looked like scoring points in either Gabby's or Nico Hülkenberg's hands, in fairness. So, finishing every Grand Prix so far, except for the freak that was the Australian Grand Prix with the weather. I feel like that's actually quite good. You're bringing the car home. Unfortunately, I don't think he'll want to be compared to Fernando Alonso in this regard anyway. Of course, Alonso being his manager, and we'll talk about the relationship between those two at the end of the video. But, it does kind of remind me a little bit, and Sauber will not thank me for saying this, but it does remind me a bit of Alonso in his first season at Minardi. They are the backmarkers of the grid, like Minardi was back in 01, before Bortoleto was even thought about. That's how long it was ago. But seeing Bortoleto do this, he's bringing the car home, he's gaining experience, and in 2026, because he is of course contracted for multiple years, he will be at Audi, as it will be in next year. He is very much gaining experience for that, for hopefully a competitive car in 2026. So I think he's doing a good job, to be honest, overall. And my second point is more that it's going to take a lot for him to score any points. Hulkenberg did score points in the opening round in Australia, but the freak weather gave him that, really. Aside from that, not that he didn't deserve it, I think he was fantastic to do that, but since then he's not really looked like scoring any points whatsoever, really. Was Hulkenberg. So I think it's going to take a lot for him to score any points. I'm really hoping that Interlagos he'll be able to get some points or something, but that Sauber looks awful. His best finish so far, Gabriel Bortoleto's 14th place in China. And that was with a raft of disqualifications. He was really 17th on the road, which would still be his best finish of the season, actually, even if you count that in. So, yeah, it's going to take a lot to score points. I'm not expecting much in that regard. Just get the car home, keep it clean, keep it consistent. And overall, you know, despite Hulkenberg's experience, like how many, I'm gonna look this up now, how many races is Hulk on? I swear he's, 235 race appearances, if you include the ones where he didn't start as well. You know, that's an incredible feat to get to that many as Hulkenberg. Bortoleto's on 5. So to be relatively close to Hulkenberg overall, I think is brilliant. I mean, yeah, in the championship, it's a yawning chasm, 6 points compared to 0, but it's 0 versus 0 if you discount the first race. You know, and overall, Bortoleto, he has beaten Hulkenberg on occasion. He's beat him during the Chinese Grand Prix, and he's not been that far off him. Aside from that, really, just a couple places between them. So, you know, and the fourth thing as well, and I knew this really when it came to Gabby, because you know, like I said, like I'll always plug. I met him, virtually at least, interviewed him. Great guy to interview back when he was fighting for the F2 Championship. And he had a really, really good mentality. You know, he's nearly 10 years younger than me. Might be more than 10 years younger than me, actually. But, you know, he's someone who very much, you know, he's got a very experienced head on young shoulders. And he's someone who is very confident in his abilities, like all good racing drivers should be. I don't get that impression from all racing drivers, particularly young racing drivers. I'm not going to name names, but, you know, I very much did get that impression with Gabby. And, you know, he stood up for himself. And I applaud him for that because, of course, I'm talking about the B driver, the B tier driver comment from Marco. It's not like Helmut Marco to make a controversial comment about a Formula 1 driver in the media, is it? No. No. But yeah, he stood up for himself. He's just like, look, you can think what you want to think. I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm going to prove it out on track. And I think he has, to be fair. Bortoleto, by the way, is nearly 10 years younger than me. Not quite. 9 years younger than me. That makes it feel old, man. And the final thing as well. And you could take this as a positive or a negative. I think it was genuinely an oversight by him. I don't think he meant to do this, but he's clearly got no fear out on track. And of course, we're talking about his kerfuffle with his driver manager, Fernando Alonso, in Saudi Arabia. Almost into the barriers he pushed Alonso there. I think there was an oversight. He might say that he just meant to squeeze him. I don't know what he said there. He might have apologised to Fernando after that, because otherwise he'll jack up his management rates, really. Take a bigger cut out of his wages. But in all seriousness, you know, he's someone who really, really stands up for himself on track and off track, and I'm grateful to see that. And yeah, those are the kind of things, you know, obrigado, Gabby, you know, you've been a real revelation since coming into Formula 1. It is hard to give him a grade, to be honest, because he's got no points. He's bottom of the championship. Hulkenberg on the whole has been better than him, but there's not been that much between him. I'll give him a 7 out of 10. You know, my opinion might change through this season, but if he just keeps bringing home the bacon at the end, and bringing home the Brazilian bacon, you know, then, you know, I'll probably give him a positive rating like that. It's difficult to grade a driver that's in a bad car, because it's like, is he at the bottom because of the car? Is it the driver? I firmly believe it's the car, personally. But what are your thoughts on Gabriel Bortoleto so far in Formula 1? What would you rate him out of 10? Jack Doohan. At the time of this recording, on the 25th of April 2025, he is still a full-time Formula 1 driver for Alpine. How long will that last for? That is always the big question when it comes to Jack Doohan in Formula 1. Well, I'll give my thoughts on him so far in 2025 and whether he is likely to make another appearance in a couple weeks' time in Miami for Alpine. And I'm not just talking about a test driver, I'm talking about as the actual second driver at the team. So I think it's been a bit troubled, to say the least, from Jack Doohan. And I don't really blame him. There is a lot of pressure on him. We know what the management style of people like Flavio Briatore is. I know that Doohan is actually one of his drivers. He is his agent, is Flavio Briatore. But, you know, there's clearly a lot of pressure on him. Whether that is his own doing, whether that's his own mistakes and stuff, I'm not going to get into that. But the fact is, he's clearly showing a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And this has really culminated in rookie errors. You know, you have to say that whether it's the team, whether it's him that's made this mistake, you know, the one in Japan for me was a bad one. Obviously, was the FP, I think it was free practice 2, wasn't in Suzuka. I know it was a practice session. Leaving his DRS flap wide open going through turn 1. I don't know whether the team really should take, I think the team should take some blame for it, but he still did it. He actually got away with it. He did do it twice, I think. The first time he got away with it, but after that, it was a disastrous crash, and that was very much a rookie error. And I think it does scream of somebody who is trying to impress, you know. Pierre Gasly, and we'll get on to Pierre Gasly, his teammate at Alpine, is clearly faster, and that's no disrespect. You know, Alpine have really, really relied on Pierre Gasly at times over the last few years. His performances at times have been incredible, have Gasly. And he's obviously a much more seasoned veteran. He's a race winner. He was a winner of a Grand Prix in an Alpha Tauri, no less, as well. He's clearly a capable driver. So for Doohan to come in, there is a lot of pressure on him from that. But let me just go through these guys. So the second thing for me, and this is honestly, as bad as the Japan one was and spectacular as it was, that's not his biggest mistake. His biggest mistakes for me were the ones in China. Because in China, he made 2 identical errors, 2 identical, desperate, last of the late breakers overtakes where he locked up and slammed into the side of cars on 2 occasions, once in the sprint race and one in the actual Grand Prix. Did the same thing twice, got 2 exactly the same penalty points on his license, I believe, for that. Just reckless driving. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And unfortunately, it's shame on Jack Doohan for doing that, because you can make these mistakes as a rookie, but you got to learn from them. He didn't learn. He did the same thing literally a day after, so not good. That's not good. Also, not the best has been his qualifying as well. He's made it through to Q2 only twice, albeit one of them was P11, I believe it was, in Bahrain, so he almost went to Q3 on that occasion. But, his qualifying performances have not been great, and that's really set him up poorly for these races at times, where he's really needed to make these lunging moves, these desperate overtakes to try and make up ground on Pierre Gasly, try and get some points, because he's still, the fourth thing we learned, he's still no points, and this is big. There's not many drivers that haven't scored points this season. There's only the likes of Gabriel Bortoleto, who's been at Sauber, where they've really struggled. Fernando Alonso, surprisingly, I guess it's not the worst company to be in, but and Liam Lawson as well. I believe those are the only 4 guys not to score points so far. Jack Doohan in that unwanted nil point club. And the final thing is he going to be replaced? Is he going to go? Because for me, honestly, if we just look at his performances overall, Jack Doohan, he's not performed good enough. Does that mean that he needs to be axed and replaced by Franco Colapinto? No, I don't think it does mean that. It's too early. He's 6th Grand Prix, and if you include the one from last season, into his Alpine career. He needs some more time. He needs for me, unless you are, a Yuji Ide or, a Pastor Maldonado, that's a whole can of worms in itself. But unless you're causing big crashes on a regular basis, unless you're being a danger to other Formula 1 drivers, for me, you should get a full season. You should get a full season, and that allows you time to mature and show improvement. 5 races, 6 races if you include last year, is not a big enough sample size for me. That's why I was against, at the time, Lawson being replaced by Tsunoda, although that does look probably like the correct decision right now, given that Tsunoda's scored points and Lawson hasn't. But we don't know if Lawson would have improved given enough time. And the same can be said for Jack Doohan as well. So for me, if I was the manager of Alpine, no, I would not replace him. But given the money they've invested in Franco Colapinto, given all the noise that's coming out of the Alpine camp, it would not surprise me at all if he is replaced for this next Grand Prix in Miami. So that being said, though, I'm recording this almost a week after Saudi Arabia, and we've not heard anything yet. Maybe by the time this goes out, we will have heard something from Alpine, but as things stand, Doohan will compete in the Miami Grand Prix for Alpine Formula 1 team. We'll see if that is the case in a week's time. Your thoughts in the comments below on Jack Doohan overall, guys. For me, I must admit I'm disappointed a bit. I'll give him a 4 out of 10. I think, honestly, I think that's how he's performed so far. He's not been very impressive at all. He really hasn't been. And again, not learning from your mistakes, that is the biggest sin that in Formula 1. And that will mean that you're out of the exit door faster than you can say Argentine pesos. But yeah, let's talk about Isack Hadjar next. Now, this is a kid who has definitely had some ups and downs so far in his very short Formula 1 career. He has made his full debut this season for the Racing Bull. So let's go for the 5 things that we have learned about Isack Hadjar in Formula 1 so far in 2025. Now, the first thing that we learned, and I guess if people have been following his junior career like I did in Formula 3 and Formula 2, you would already know this, but he definitely wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a very passionate driver, and we've seen the emotion flood out of him as well. Of course, I'm talking about when he did not start, when he crashed out before the Australian Grand Prix even got underway earlier this season. Very emotional, very sad seeing him, crash out like that and then basically cry his eyes out through the paddock. Anthony Hamilton putting an arm around his shoulder and everything. He is someone who is very emotional, and we see the ups and the downs of of that. He's very passionate when things go well, and also he's very sad when things don't go well. But the second thing that we have learned, despite the criticisms of people like Dr. Helmut Marko, who, you know, look at my videos about him if you want to see that in more detail. That was embarrassing from Marko, but that's just my opinion. Not everybody agreed with me, of course. But the main thing is as well that he picked himself up. It would have been very, very easy for him to get down and you know, just really kind of regress basically at that point. But he picked himself up, got on with things. He looked pretty solid in China, and since then he's also scored points as well in Formula One, that's huge for him in a car that overall I would say is not that great. He did start very well at Australia, started better than what we expected, but you know, I don't really see Racing Bulls getting much above 8th, 9th in the Constructors' Championship this season. So to score points, which is something that neither of his teammates managed to do in the same car, I don't believe. I don't know if Tsunoda actually got points while he was at Racing Bulls. I know he has now. Now he's at a Red Bull, but I know his teammate Liam Lawson has not scored any points yet. So for him to get points in Formula One so far, I think that's huge for his career, really. And overall as well, the third thing that we've learned, he's got on top of the car. You know, a lot of people think that, you know, he's going to struggle, you know, being a new driver in Formula One with the, you know, the Red Bull car kind of being passed down to the Racing Bulls, it being very difficult to drive. That's not really happened, and he seems to be comfortable in the car. He's getting into good points positions on a semi-regular basis, which again, that's something his teammate hasn't managed to do yet at all this season. So that is a big feather to wear in his cap as we go through this season. But in particular, you gotta say that his qualifying performances have been really impressive. And again, it's not a huge surprise if you followed him through Formula 2. Hadjar, especially in his first season, was very erratic. He'd just pull out some absolute worldy performances every now and again, get a podium out of nowhere when he was still a rookie in that series, get a pole position out of nowhere, or a really high qualifying position. And in qualifying in particular in Formula 1, he's been pretty impressive. I think he's had 2 Q3 appearances, and he's been pretty close on a few occasions too. I think in Australia he's P11, so he is a very good qualifier. That is the main area where I think he's been really impressive. But if you're going to criticize anything, the final thing, race pace, it's not quite been on the same level, and that might be the car. It probably is the car, in fairness, but the race pace on the whole hasn't been quite as consistent as qualifying has, but he's still been solid, I'd say. I don't think it's anything really to worry about, and I think as the season goes on, he's going to grow more and more into that role, and it's going to be a really interesting battle between him and Liam Lawson for the remainder of the campaign, because right now, as things stand on current performances, Hadjar is top dog, and Lawson is not going to take that line down. Absolutely not. But yeah, what are your thoughts about Isack Hadjar so far in Formula 1? If I was to give him a rating out of 10, I'd probably give him a 7. I think he's been good, not spectacular, shown some signs of brilliance, but overall a tad inconsistent. But hey, he's a rookie. You know, you have to expect that. They're not going to come into Formula 1 looking like seasoned pros, because they're not. They're new to the sport, and they're very young men in some circumstances as well. I mean, these kids are literally kids, like 18, 19, 20 years old. So, you know, give him some time. I'm sure he'll grow into it some more, Hadjar, and he's impressed me so far, to be honest. But what do you think about Isack Hadjar so far in Formula 1? Like, share, comment, subscribe, guys. As always, I do value your opinions. I do look over the comments as well. And yeah, see you soon for some more content on the world of Formula 1 just like this. Guys, have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world.